What's up guys, it's me Jeremy, and if you've been struggling in the Hearthstone arena, you've come to the right place. In this guide I will do my best to give you the tools you need to succeed in arena, so that you can become a better player and make the decisions for yourself. Let's get started. Now, before you even start arena, there is one thing you need to do, and that is lower your expectations. Any run with 10 wins or more is always going to have a decent degree of good luck involved, and you aren't always going to be lucky. Your target should never be 12 wins or 11 or even 10, but rather 7 wins. At 7 wins you can pay for your arena guaranteed and can continue to play indefinitely. If you draft and play perfectly, you can get 7 wins in probably 90% or more of your arena runs, but getting 12 is rare simply because you need some luck to make it happen. Alright, now let's really get into it. There are of course 2 parts to arena, drafting and then the playing of course. Both are equally important to perform at a solid level if you want to hit that 7 win mark. Let's get started with the drafting. The first step to drafting is of course picking a class. I highly recommend picking a class that you have experience with. You want to play a class that you know how to play already, not something that someone else told you to play. Arena is not really the place to learn classes, unless you're willing to lose. On top of that, I recommend having at least maybe 3 to 4 preferential classes that you get good on. That way you'll be able to get one of them almost every time. I personally very much prefer the Shaman, Priest, Paladin, and Mage in that order. So I always pick one of those classes when I can, as I'm very good and very consistent at playing them in Arena. You can do just fine with other classes of course, but those 4 are my personal choice. Now, the way you want to draft in Arena is that you always need to think about board control. Board control is absolutely key in Arena, as combos that rush you down are very difficult to pull off, unlike in Constructed, so you want to build a deck that can control the board as well as possible. Value health over damaging creatures. For example, a generic 4-5 is much better than a generic 5-4, as it being harder to kill will help you maintain that board control. And watch out for 1 HP creatures too, as they can often just be killed for free by pretty much half of the hero abilities in the game. Another thing that works well is buff cards like the Shattered Sun Cleric or the Dark Iron Dwarf. But watch out for some buff cards. The Dwarf and the Cleric are really good as they help maintain board advantage. You can buff a creature, then use that creature that you just buffed to kill an opponent's creature while still having that creature that you played. Cards like Humility, on the other hand, are kind of terrible, since although they do buff a creature, they do not help maintain a board advantage, since they won't give you another creature after you use your first creature that you buffed to trade with your opponents. But a card like Blessing of Kings is great since it does give you health, and thus will keep your creature alive. It's all about that board control. Charge is also pretty good in Arena, as it allows you to regain board control, but I would avoid low health charge creatures, with the exception of the Argent Commander, as Divine Shield is also really good in Arena, except really versus a Mage, since it gives you a lot of plays for board control. That being said, try to avoid spells that don't really help you with card advantage. Avoid spells that could potentially be minuses like Humility as mentioned, and other things like Charge or Silence or things like that. What you should try to get with your spells is of course some draw power if you can, and then lots and lots of removal. Removal from spells is amazing in Arena, since you can play a creature, then keep that on the board by killing your opponent's creature with your spells. You keep your creature at full health, and you get to hit the opponent's hero with your creature. And the same goes with weapons too, of course. In addition, floaters and draw power are powerful in Hearthstone too, as they help you keep your card advantage. And the speed of your deck is not as big of a deal in Arena as it is in Constructed. Cards like the Novice Engineer, Gnomish Inventor, and Azure Drake are great to have as they can create easy pluses and give you a lot of advantage. And of course, staples like the Acidic Swamp Ooze, Spellbreaker are great cards too. Also, always try to draft the overpowered cards of your class. When I drafted my 4th Holy Nova on this Priest deck, I considered against it since I already had 3, right? But that 4th one was absolutely huge in helping me reach 12 wins on this deck, so don't be afraid to draft a ton of copies of a really good card. As once again, in Arena, speed doesn't really matter. It's all about card and board advantage. And when it comes to drafting combos, you want to forgo the risk and pick up the better combo piece first. For example, if I see an Ancient Watcher, I won't take it unless I already have a Defender of Argus, Sun Fury Protector, or at least some sort of silence in my deck. Otherwise, it's just a really big risk that might not pay off, and that's how you want to approach combos in Arena. Also, try to avoid the kinds of cards that I call win more cards. Things like Bloodlust or the Raid Leader really just aren't too great, because they require full board control to make a huge impact. But the thing is that if you already have full board control, then the game is probably over anyways. Yes, these kinds of cards can speed it up and help a little bit so they aren't totally terrible, just realize that they aren't absolutely amazing. And lastly, you want to, of course, draft a solid mana curve where you have a bunch of 2 and 3 drops, a decent amount of 4 drops, and then less and less as the mana cost increases. You don't want to be in a situation where your mana is starved. One thing about Arena though, is that it's much easier to survive to the late game, so having a mana curve that peaks on the 4 drop or is a little on the high end can actually work just fine, and can even work to your benefit, as long as those cards that you're taking are really good in the first place. Just remember to draft for board control always, and get the best cards that you can get, and due to the nature of Arena, you aren't going to get all the best cards that every deck has. If this video gets enough reception, I could make an extensive drafting tier list, but for now, you should have the knowledge to make most of the choices for yourself. Alright, now let's get into the playing portion. The first thing I noticed in Arena is that the first game can be deceptively hard. This is because you're going to play against other decks that are having their first game too, and they haven't proven anything yet. So although sometimes you'll get lucky and face a novice opponent, sometimes the first game can actually be really hard. So don't feel bad about losing that first game. On my priest deck that I went 12-2 with, I actually lost the very first game with that deck. That being said, after the first game, I'd say that up to 5 wins, it's pretty easy. But after you reach 5 wins, every game is going to be at least somewhat of a challenge, as you will be facing players who have at least some idea of what they're doing, and at least have an okay deck. So the difficulty spikes a little bit at around 5 wins, so be ready for that. And for playing the game in Arena, in general, you always need to play for board control. Conserve your resources when possible, but always try to maintain that board advantage. Be willing to take some damage to gain some pluses and some board control. Oftentimes, taking 5 damage or so for a +1 or +2 can definitely be worth it, unless you're below 15 HP or so. I'd say that 15 HP is the changing point. At 15 HP, you can attempt a rush down provided that you don't think your opponent has some sort of healing or armor, while when you are at 15 HP, that's the time to start being afraid of getting rushed down. Overall, make sure that you always play with card advantage in mind, as board control really is key in Arena, and it's going to win you almost all of your games. My name is Jeremy, and that's it for my video on Hearthstone Arena. Let me know if you guys want some more Hearthstone content. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to check out some of my others on the screen right now. I'd love it if you could support me with a like, and make sure to subscribe for some more awesome content in the future if you enjoyed this video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.